All right, so we're about like 1 week away from the NFL draft, and I'm super, super hyped for it. I am every year. It's one of the biggest sports events that I actually look forward to throughout the year. I'm a nerd. I know it. I know it. But anyway, people are wondering, where's your final NFL mock draft? Where's 4.0? Where is it? Where's the one you're going to be submitting for the NFL mock draft challenge? And if you don't know what the NFL mock draft challenge, all you have to do is do it through PFF or do it on paper. You can do it through any generator you want. Just do a mock draft for the first round. Submit it to me for a chance to win $50. That's all you got to do. Just look up the 3Gen podcast on Instagram, submit it there, find my socials, do whatever you got to do and for a chance to win $50. But anyway, I'm not just doing one round. No, no, no. I'm not just doing 2 rounds. No, that'd be silly. No, I'm doing 3 rounds for this 4.0 NFL mock draft. I went above and beyond, and I did a good amount of research. I took this somewhat seriously. Obviously, some players probably fall way more than they will in the draft. Some players will probably go way higher than they actually will in the NFL draft. But at the end of the day, that's how the draft works. So I think this is pretty dang good. And Mel Kiper just actually, funny enough, put out his 3 round NFL mock draft with Field Yates. So we'll have to see which one is better and or even more accurate. Will I end up doing better than Mel Kiper? Am I coming for Mel Kiper's job? I don't know. But let's get into it. Let me explain what I have going on here in this NFL mock draft. The past one was just according to what I thought was speculation and visits. This one is what I actually think will happen based off the speculation, visits, and just buzz going around the NFL. All right, let's enter this solo draft. In the Titans, it's not a surprise. No one's wondering who is it going to be. It's not the Trayvon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson guy pick. It's not the Bryce Young or Trey Young or Trey Lance. It's gonna be Cam Ward. You know, I feel like for a little bit of time it was debating between Cam Ward and Sanders, and then Sanders fell out of the picture and became Abdul Carter, who's going to be there. Um, and you know, I'll have the Titans address edge a little bit later. They'll be getting someone who could have been a number 1 pick a year ago, but hey, they get the best possible franchise quarterback in Cam Ward. Obviously, he's got some character issues. He left that bowl game early and they ended up losing to Iowa State when he was playing for Miami. Not something you want to see out of a franchise quarterback. That's actually what had me take Sanders for my 1.0 and 2.0 at number 1, just because the character issues. I don't want that as defining that as a leader for the team. But I think Cameron Ward can work on it. He's got the best characteristics of a franchise quarterback. Um, he's also old enough. Obviously that Titans team's not destined to win now, but it's probably the best conference for Cameron Ward to do what he can do, test out his abilities. He doesn't have a lot to work with on that offense. He's got some decent running backs with Tony Pollard, um, among others, but I think Cameron Ward's going to be the pick at 1. No one's going to be surprised at that. All right, number 2. It's destined to happen. They just signed Joe Flacco a few days ago. They're not drafting Sanders at number 2. The Browns, they're not even going to take Carter to put across from Myles Garrett. They're taking they're taking Travis Hunter, corner for Colorado. They'll probably play him mostly at receiver. That's where their number 1 need is compared to corner because they have Emerson, Denzel Ward. Um, they have another guy there, but if we look at their depth chart, sorry, this is like a perk of mine. I look at depth charts to kind of explain picks. I'm kind of like I get really defensive over my pick selection, even though everyone knows that this is going to be Travis Hunter. But if we look at their depth chart, this is what I do. I look at teams' needs, and then obviously I look at visits, and I look at traction and buzz, but also I look at depth charts. I look at needs. That really helps come second and third round. If you look at like some of the third round picks, I was like, oh, where do I go with here? You know, so when you look at receiver, they got Jerry Judy. He like Travis Hunter can overcome Jerry Judy really easily for that number 1 receiving option there. And then at corner, you got Denzel Ward, Emerson, and Greg Newsom. That was the other guy I was looking for. So you already have 3 solid corners there. You can play Hunter a little bit. You know, they're all questionable. If you got an injury there, you can sub in Travis Hunter a little bit. I don't think the Browns are a team that would play him both sides of the ball that much. I think they will just because of Travis Hunter's threats. But I think they'll play him more on the offensive side of the ball compared to defense, even though Travis Hunter It even calls him a corner on PFF. Um, I've even seen some trades where the Raiders trade up. Pete Carroll can play Travis Hunter on both sides of the ball. They lost Nate Hobbs. They could really use a corner, and they also need a receiving threat because they don't have anyone there. That's actually not a bad pick for the Raiders if the Raiders do move up for the Cleveland Browns. I did see that getting mocked. I think it was by Rhett Lewis, um, for NFL Network, and that's not a bad trade. I actually like that a lot. But I think the Raiders are content with staying at number 6 and taking. Pete Carroll loves his, Marshawn Lynch's loves that run game. I think they're going to stick there and take Ashton Genty. But the Cleveland Browns, they're taking Travis Hunter. No one's debating that at this point. Honestly, I think that for top 3 picks are pretty much locked. You could save 4, but the Patriots are probably having a debate there. And then we look at the Giants. They're going to take Abdul Carter. No surprise there. They wouldn't take Ashton Genty at this pick. Tyrone Tracy kind of proved himself that he could be the guy for the Giants. Ashton Genty would be a huge improvement, but just you don't pass up on a Hall of Fame type caliber player as an Abdul Carter. Is he the best edge rusher that we've seen the past 3 drafts? That's debatable. You could say. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't say he was a better prospect compared to Aiden Hutchinson, Trevon Walker. That was an outstanding draft. Maybe last year he would be probably last year. I would know quarterbacks were huge last year. I'm pretty sure the first edge rusher picking was Dallas Turner. So Abdul Carter would easily be the best edge rusher out of last year's draft. But this year, Abdul Carter by a million. I mean, the first 3 are just light years better compared to the players below them. The Patriots were probably hoping that Sanders or New York takes Sanders. That way they get a chance for Hunter or Carter. Unfortunately, and that's not how things going to work out for them. And Abdul Carter is going to go to the New York Giants and give them a ferocious pass rush. He can is he like a Micah Parsons? Could he play linebacker and edge? Maybe, and maybe that's how they play him at first. Just get him as many snaps as possible, get him familiar with the system before maybe they put him in the rotation with Thibodeau, and maybe he can even start over Kayvon Thibodeau because he's on that 5th year option. Will they extend him? I don't. They might not need to, depending on how good Abdul Carter is, and then maybe that 2nd year he can. Maybe Carter wins Defensive Rookie of the Year. Just maybe he has a very similar career to how Micah Parsons is playing right now. We'll have to see compared to how that Giants defensive scheme is there. All right, the New York Patriots. They need help in the trenches. They need that starting tackle, and I've seen this being debated for Ashton Genty, Armin Membu, and Will Campbell. I think the best prospect for them and what I've seen the most is Will Campbell, and I think they are going to take Will Campbell. If you compare Will Campbell and Armin Membu is just an athletic freak, and I think the Patriots want a guy who's just capable to win now. Um, they don't want someone for his upside. They want someone who's already shown himself on the field that he can be dominant, especially at that left tackle position, which is such an important role in the NFL. It protects the blind side of the QB, and I think Will Campbell is going to be the pick. I have seen at my last one, I had the Patriots trade down with the Bears, and the Patriots still got Will Campbell, and the Bears moved up to take Ashton Genty, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think the teams are going to stick to where they are as of now. I have teams from what I've seen from the buzz around the NFL, doesn't seem like a lot of teams are wanting to move down, especially within this top 10. I've seen the Giants taking some calls, but I don't see them moving, especially when Abdul Carter is on the board. But next we have New York Patriots, and it's Will Campbell. That's going to be the pick there. Next we have Jacksonville Jaguars, and it's been mocked heavily. It's not a secret. They need to get some interior bolst to that defensive line. They have Trayvon Walker. They have Josh Hines Allen. Great edge rushers. But you need something, that interior presence. If you looked at what they did in free agency, they just didn't address that defensive tackle. I've seen Tyler Warren being mocked here. They did lose Evan Ingram, but they got an offensive coordinator as a head coach now. I think they don't need to worry about that. Especially on the offense side of the ball. It's that defense that was really lackluster for them last season. And they have good pieces on that defense for sure. They really rebuilt it. Corner they addressed with Jordan Lewis, so I think they can shy off corner right now. So Mason Graham, I feel like has to be the pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then the Raiders. The Raiders, I've seen this being Jade Barron. Um, just because they lost Nate Hobbs, they need corners. You know, I'm tired of just saying it. I'm just gonna show you. Uh, NFL free agency contracts. There's a really good website that shows it all. What is it's Spot Check? There we go. If we go to the Raiders, this might be a long time. I'll probably just skim through the second, and third round. It's gonna be a long video. I hate to say it. I'm in a talkative mood, I guess, today. I love to explain these picks. I love to dive through each individual pick. If we look at the Raiders, filtering the data, and maybe I do one of these videos for every single person in the Three Gen podcast, right? Maybe I do it for my for Uncle Johnny, we do it for Grandpa, we do it for Dad. We do it for everybody, right? Depending on how they do. Maybe they want to do it like just individually. We'll have to see, right? All right. Well, I mean, now it doesn't even want to work for me, for some reason. So that's nice. Let's reload this. The radio. Here we go. All right, you see, they really address. They kind of addressed the secondary. They just addressed the secondary, but got cheaper. You know, they lost Nate Hobbs, but they brought in Eric Stokes. They traded corners with Green Bay. They got Lonnie Johnson, and then they got Jeremy Chin to replace Trevor Mohang, who went to the Panthers. So they kind of traded with the Panthers too a little bit. Um, so they don't need to address corner, even though maybe they will later. But they just desperately need a running back, right? Mostert is not going to be their starting running back from here to come. If you look at relinquished, they're just yeah. Alexander Madison is going away. They're going to take Ashton Genty here to be the pick for. If you look at Pete Carroll, look at this running back in the running game. They need one. It's the perfect pick. Him to stay somewhat local, to him to go to a big market in Las Vegas. It would be a big pick for Ashton Genty there. All right, now we got the New York Jets, and this could be one of two guys. They want to build around Justin Fields. That's been proven. That's been shown. And you could get Armin Membu. I've seen this being mocked a lot. Um, and you know you'd get two franchise tackles for the future with Olu Fashanu, and now you have Armin Membu. That would be a dynamic duo at the tackles position. Justin Fields doesn't have to worry about any pass rush, but I think they trust Olu Fashanu on that one side, and that Justin Fields is good under pressure and he can get away. And even so, why get him protection when you can just get him a reliable pass catcher that he can just throw the ball immediately to if there is a pass rush? And I've seen them done extensive work on this guy. They don't really have someone at that position right now. And the pick's going to be Tyler Warren, tight end out of Penn State. Is he a the best tight end prospect compared to Brock Bowers? I don't know. You know, that's a debate and a half right there. I mean, Tyler Warren did do a lot for that Penn State team, but so did Brock Bowers for that Georgia team. So it's a debate to have. We'll have to see how good Tyler Warren can be in that Jet scheme. Maybe they adjust it. You know, the Lions system does kind of support tight ends. They brought in a bunch of Lions assistants for that offensive scheme there. We had T.J. Hawkinson, Sam Laporta, so I think Tyler Warren could really thrive in a system like that. It's gonna be fun to see how that Lions scheme can really benefit a quarterback in Justin Fields, who is mobile compared to Jared Goff, who's very unmobile. If you get what I'm trying to say. So Tyler Warren is gonna be the pick there at number 7, and the Panthers are here at number 8. And I know a lot of Panthers fans are looking. They want Abdul Carter. They've been wanting Abdul Carter. Um, and you know they're not gonna get Abdul Carter, unfortunately. And you know, they need a big time receiver too, but I think edge is still a more pressing need for them to get on their defense. Bryce Young's proved himself last year. And you know, Of course, Adam Thielen's kind of holding his own. They got some young guys though. They got Choker and Xavier Leggett. So I think they'll hold off on receiver just for this first round. I don't think McMillan is great to pick this high up as of right now. Maybe the Panthers shock us. They reach. I mean, I've heard a lot of buzz that a lot of teams will be making reaches, and I'll have some reaches down the board here. But I think the Panthers go um, the closest player they can get to an Abdul Carter, and that's a Jalen Walker. They give him. I feel like the Panthers is also the best fit for him. They can let Jalen Walker be Jalen Walker. They can let him be just the most versatile on that defensive line. He can play linebacker. He can play edge. They kind of can rotate him wherever they see him fit. Best fit. He can go around the field, just getting snaps for him. Is going to be most ideal. Kind of like Carter, but we know how good Carter can be. Jalen Walker, kind of like Trayvon Walker, is just very athletic. We know he can be a dominant player. We just have to unlock it. And I think the Panthers are going to go with that Jalen Walker linebacker out of Georgia. Now, the Saints, the talk is that Derek Carr could be out for the year. And they are laser focused on taking a quarterback, whether that they trade back and take Jackson Dart or they stay at their pick and take Shadurl Sanders. We'll have to see. Me personally, maybe they do add a quarterback, but maybe they add like a Tyler Shaw later on to compete with Spencer Rattler. Take a better position here. Take an edge rusher here, a corner, because they lost a lot of corners. Um, but I feel like their corner room is fine for now. They got some guys there, but the Saints, if they do stick with Spencer Rattler, draft Tyler Shaw later, who's been getting a lot of hype, they can take maybe like an Archie Manning in the first round, the number one pick if they do tank. But they have Kellen Moore now. I think he's gonna want to be aggressive. He's gonna want to win now. He's just coming off a Super Bowl. I don't think he came to the Saints to rebuild. I think he came to the Saints to win now. Especially in a weak division like the NFC South. So I think they're gonna take Sanders out of Colorado. I think Kellen Moore, with that system, can really benefit Sanders. And I think Sanders can actually thrive there for New Orleans. But I think Sanders would thrive whether that's the Steelers or the Saints. Just whether the Saints receiving corps is healthy and can really benefit him, like Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, who was breaking out last season before his season-ending injury. But Sanders is going to be the pick there for the Saints. And the Bears, they really, really, from what I've heard, want a running back. They're laser focused on Ashton Genty. If they don't get him, I think they take the second best running back available. I think they're gonna reach here for a running back, kind of like the Lions did for Jameer Gibbs. It was a reach back then. It was a right now it's a genius pick, but I think the Bears are gonna take Amarian Hampton, running back out of North Carolina. That's what I'm currently mocking. I did it in my last. And you see, if the first 15 picks are very similar to my past, I just didn't have a trade, right? I think I had the Bears trading up for Ashton Genty, or maybe I didn't. I don't know. I think that's what I had happen. But the Bears are going to take the second best running back available. That's Amarian Hampton. Um, they could go offensive tackle here. We don't know how good Braxton Jones can stay on his own, or Darnell Wright. We'll have to see. But they're young players. I think Ben Johnson can develop those guys. He's gonna trust them for now, especially in this first round, and take a high tier running back to complement DeAndre Swift and give Caleb Johnson. They want a good running back tandem. Is Hampton the perfect duo for DeAndre Swift? No, they're kind of similar. Swift, it's in his name. He's Swifty, and that's kind of the same type of player. He's an elusive back, but so is Hampton kind of. Hampton's more of a power back than elusive back, but he's still an elusive back. But I'm saying he has more power traits compared to DeAndre Swift. But Trayvon Henderson probably would be the uh, who's the Lions running back? I am blanking hard. He got injured. Oh my goodness! Wow. I gotta find him right now. Wow, I'm blanking hard. This is bad. There we go, David Montgomery. Wow, that's embarrassing. Okay, David Monk. He's not. Trayvon Henderson's probably the most comparison to David Montgomery for that Bears offense. But Hampton's the best running back available. Ben Johnson's gonna want his Jameer Gibbs, and he gets it there at pick 10. All right, now we got pick 11, and this is where Armin Membu is gonna go. They lost Jalen Moore. They're not a huge loss, right? The people are acting like the 49ers are done. They're not done. They still have great players. They lost a lot of role players, but they still have their superstars, and you can get role players around that. If you look, it's kind of like the NBA. It's like, let's say the Celtics lost their bench. Uh, I mean, that sucks. They don't have the depth anymore, but they still have the superstars. They can always get more role players. Um, so when we look at the 49ers, like they're still going to be contenders without their bench. Like they might not be Super Bowl contenders, but they'll still be playoff contenders, right? So if we look at who they signed, oh, it's not even load. I have to reload this again. Bad gateway. Oh, that's not even letting me look at it for some reason. Okay, very weird. But anyway, so I guess it's not going to show me. But just to look at the 49ers team, just to look at their depth chart, they still have great pieces. They signed Demarcus Robinson. Just like that's still a good receiving core. I know they lost Debo, but they have Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, and Demarcus Robinson. Still a good receiving core. They still have Christian McCaffrey. They traded Jordan Mason away, but they still have Isaac Garando, who proved himself he could be a great backup running back. They lost Jalen Moore. Um, they still have great pieces, and they lost their guard Aaron Banks to the Packers, who've got too much money. They got good people. Ben Barch can play left guard. Dominic Pooney can play right guard. They're really fine offensive line. And on the defensive side of the ball, they'll be fine too. They still have Yetter Gross Matos. Could use some more depth at the defensive tackle position. They lost Leonard Floyd, but they were trying to make space for Joey Bosa. Obviously, didn't work out. He went to the Bills instead. But they're getting better. I still feel like they'll be solid. A defensive line could always use a boost. Drake Jackson is gonna be there too. He's a young guy. He can be there. But they still have Nick Bosa, superstar. They lost Dre Greenlaw. They have Fred Warner, superstar. They lost Hufanga to the Broncos. Okay, you have Malik Mustafa. I'm pretty good. I shouldn't say superstar, but still good, right? I'm free safety could use a boost, but the 49ers are fine. Is what I'm trying to say. Is what you guys get. Anyway, so the 49ers, they're going to take, in my opinion, if you look at their depth chart, um Colton McKitts is kind of scary there at right guard, and even Armin Membu could play left tackle too. Could be the heir to Trent Williams. So they're going to take Armin Membu, who's just the best player on the board. I've seen this be Will Johnson. I think they can hold off on corner for now. Renardo Green, obviously, you don't want him playing that corner position. But, they got Trey Brown. They got Demondre Lenore. So they had two solid corners. Like Richie Grant, they signed at safety. Nice, cheap, pretty good safety there who can back up Mustafa. But so the 49ers are fine, is what I'm trying to say. But Armin Membu, I feel like it's going to be the pick there. It's what I've seen. Um, and that's what from the visits, and I think that's going to be the pick there. Dallas Cowboys, I think it's going to be a Texas guy, whether they take offensive tackle or receiver, but I've seen it rumored too much. I've seen it mocked a lot. I think they want someone next to CD Lamb. And this I feel the pick I feel like has to be Matthew Golden, receiver out of Texas. I want to explain the pick more than that. I've been talking so much, and we have so many more picks to go. I apologize, Cowboys fans, but I feel like you should still be happy. with a Matthew Golden out of Texas. It gives CeeDee Lamb a great pair, gives Dak Prescott another guy to look at. And they've always survived on offensive line thus far. Yeah, you don't get a running back, but for what you've signed tells me you don't want a running back. You got Javonte Williams. You signed Miles Sanders for some reason. They signed two running backs. Um, so it just doesn't look like they're targeting running back. If you look at the Cowboys team, you see what they got. The Terrence Steele can play right tackle. Is not a great. They signed Robert Jones from the Bills. He can play right guard. It's a solid. They have Tyler Guyton at left tackle. Solid player there. He's still developing, but he can be fine. Jake Ferguson at tight end. He's developing still. A very young team, to be honest. They let go of D-Law just to get a bit younger, so they could use another guy. But they signed Dante Fowler to replace him for cheaper, and they got Solomon Thomas. This team still looks pretty solid, but they need another receiver. I don't think Tolbert is that guy. Turpin's the slot guy. And Jonathan Mingo, he's not the guy either, right? So bring Dak Prescott a legitimate number two option. In Texas, Archie or Ewers, they had Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond. So they had a dynamic duo. Matthew Golden wasn't getting enough targets as he probably should have, but he put him in that whatever Dallas got there with their new their new head coach. I'm sorry to laugh, but I think most of the league did laugh when they hired their offensive coordinator. But ultimately, maybe the proof was wrong. We'll have to see. Next, we got the Bills. Uh, it just seems like this is going to be the pick. They're talking about trading Jalen Ramsey. Even if they do have Jalen Ramsey, they have Storm Duck at their number two corner position. They have an okay slot guy, from what I've seen. Yeah, they have. Oh, I'm not on the depth chart. They have uh, Kaber Kakoa, and they have Artie Burns too as well. So they should be. Safeties are fine. They lost Jalen Hollard, Javon Holland. My fault. But they brought in Ifeatu Mefalanu and Ashton Davis to replace them for much cheaper deals. Ifeatu Mefalanu was very productive in 2023 for the Detroit Lions. He's very versatile. He can play anywhere you want him to. He can play corner too, but the Bills can have him start at strong safety, and he can be very productive for you there. I think that's a fine pick for them. But the Bills, they need another corner. Storm Duck's not going to be the guy. Jalen Ramsey is, we don't even know. So, Will Johnson, this is where his fall is going to end, and he's going to be going to Miami to be their number one lockdown corner. Because we don't, Will Greer is the GM there. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He said if Jalen Ramsey's he's throwing pretty much his superstars, his older superstars into trade talks. He's like, anyone want Jalen Ramsey? Anyone want Tyreek Hill? So the guys that you traded for just a few years ago for high draft picks, he doesn't really want anymore. He's just like throwing them in the air, kind of throwing them under the dirt. So they're gonna take Will Johnson here. Next we have the Colts, and they need a tight end. It's not a secret they want Tyler Warren, but he won't be there. So Colston Loveland's going to be the pick. It just seems like the most logical from the visits and what I've seen. I know the Chargers also really want him. It will be interesting to see if the Chargers move up. I don't know if Harbaugh is willing to do that for his own guy. We'll have to see. Um, Justin Herbert could definitely benefit for another tight end, but the Colts they only have Mo Cox, and you need to give whatever quarterback, whether it's Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, or maybe another quarterback down the board that I draft them. We'll have to see. But they need a tight end. It also they get a guy that sure didn't get a lot of targets in Michigan, but he was really benefited from blocking to boost his blocking game for that very heavy Michigan run offense. And that's what kind of the Colts have too with Jonathan Taylor. So they not only get a big time target that they can rely on in the red zone, but they also get a guy who can block down the field for Jonathan Taylor, and that's going to be Colston Loveland. Oh, now we got the Atlanta Falcons. Now, this is kind of where the draft grew in many ways. These first 14 picks I'm very confident with. Some of them might not be right, but I feel like the first 14, I have a very good chance that they all could be exact matches, all exact picks. 15 is where it could veer different ways. The Falcons, I feel like they do take edge compared to last year, where they didn't take edge. They took Michael Penix, quarterback. Um, that'd be interesting if they don't take a quarterback here. Maybe they take McMillan as another receiver. I don't see that happening, though. They just lost Matthew Judon. Yeah, they signed Leonard Floyd, but you want someone long term there, and you lost Grady Jarrett. You just need to bolster that front seven, is what I'm trying to say. And the most intriguing prospect from what all the visits I've seen, I have the Falcons taking here at 15. He's very high on PFF. I've seen him, you know, fall out of the first round, but I've also seen him as high as this pick right here, and that's where I'm gonna have Shamar Stewart, edge out of Texas A&M. I've also seen this being Mike Green. It's gonna be one of the two, in my opinion, Shamar Stewart or Mike Green, and I have this ultimately being Shamar Stewart, edge out of Texas A&M. And that's just like I said, just gives them a young guy. If you look at what they got there, in the Atlanta Falcons front seven, Shamar Stewart can really benefit from that. Look at Morgan Fox. You don't really want as your starting left side defensive end in this 3-4. Even at your right defensive end, you need a bolster in no depth at that nose tackle position. They just need more depth. And Shamar Stewart's kind of more of a true defensive end. I feel like he can fit in that 3-4. Leonard Floyd's more of an outside linebacker. As we see, they signed Devon Diablo. So they really bolstered that defensive line with Shamar Stewart. All right, number 16, we got the Cardinals. They lost Roy Lopez. And based off the visits I've seen, this guy is being blamed for some character issues, but ultimately he's just a really good talent. And I've had him fall to 31 before, but now I have him jumped up all the way to 16 based off what I've seen, based off the rumors I've heard, and that's Walter Nolan, defensive tackle out of Ole Miss. Um, it's just the Cardinals. They could take offensive line here. They could go with Calvin Banks or Josh Simmons. One of those two offensive linemen would be great for there to put across from Paris Johnson. But I think the Cardinals are going to hold off on that offensive line. Like I said, trust in your mobile quarterback and get more depth on a unit in that front seven that's very old, um, and could use a boost, especially there. Like, could this be McMillan to add to Marvin Harrison Jr.? Maybe, but I don't think they add another young wide receiver. They have Trey McBride. Jonah Williams, I think he can play that right tackle position. They have Calvin Beecham behind him as well. I feel like they would need more help on the inside of the offensive line than technically outside. Kind of like the Jets, they could have a combination of Future and Paris Johnson and Jonah in whoever they take, whether Calvin Banks, Josh Simmons, but they just got Josh Sweat, David Collins, and B.J. Ojolari on the outside. Darius Robinson, young guy, L.J. Collier on the right defensive end. But if you look at the defensive tackle, Calais Campbell's very up there in age. Dalvin Tomlinson, very up there in age. You need more depth there for it to build a solid rotation. And I've also seen this pick being cornered as well. So I've seen this pick being a whole bunch of options. People don't really know what to do with the Cardinals. The most pick is offensive line, but I'm gonna have this being Walter Nolan. Next, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. And yes, I know they need an edge. And I'm not going to actually have them take an edge. But don't worry, I'm not having them take offense. I know they could use the interior offensive line presence. But ultimately, you saw what the Bengals did last season. They're not going to take a receiver this early. I hope they don't take a receiver this early. But if you look at their uh, secondary, I just glitched right there. But if you look at their secondary, it's just bolstered, or it's torn apart. Dax Hill at corner could be good, but Jordan Battle and Geno Stone. Jordan Battle, is he the guy? Could they move him down a corner? I've seen this being mocked before, and I've seen based off the visits, I feel like this was going to happen. If you look defensive end, they got young guys. They got Trey Hendrickson. He's probably going to stay there. Cam Sample, I don't know if he's still going to be there, but they have Miles Murphy to fill in. They could use more depth, and I'll have them put in more depth later. but the best pick available right now for this Bengals team, this could be like a Mike Green or Michael Williams, right? But I'm gonna have this just take best player available. And you could say Malachi Starks is, but I've seen Nick Emawara being mocked ahead of him actually, safety out of South Carolina, and that's what I'm gonna have the Bengals do here. Get themselves a lockdown safety. You can rotate in with Jordan Battle, um, and just build a solid rotation there in the secondary where they just got torched last season as they dealt with so many injuries. Next, we have the Seattle Seahawks at 18. And I've seen this being Kenneth Grant just because of the connection there with Mike McDonald. But this is not their number one need. Everyone says they need offensive line as well. If you look at their offensive line, it's not as bad as many would think. And I think they know that. I think they're going to address that need in the second round and third round. They're going to take best player available. I'm going to make this smaller just so I can even click the Seahawks. There we go. There we go. The Seattle Seahawks. We look at their depth chart, right? We look at their offensive line. They have Abraham Lucas. He can play right tackle. Charles Cross. They can play left tackle. They have a solid two offensive linemen. Christian Hayes, a solid left guard. They really need help on that right side. For that right guard center position. I think they'll find that tackle. So Josh Jones has even decent depth at the tackle position. So I'm gonna have the Seahawks pass on tackle. They have Cooper Kupp now in the slot. They have JSN at number one. But I think they're actually going to bring in another Ohio State receiver to play the number two. And this guy's used to playing the number two. He's never the number one target there from when he plays, but he can thrive as the being number two because the Seattle Seahawks are going to take Emeka Egbuka, receiver out of Ohio State, to join JSN there in Seattle. Is he as good as McMillan? Uh, Probably not, but it's also not what the Seahawks need. I've seen this being mocked as McMillan before, but I think they'd value another Ohio State guy who can play the two, can play kind of like a Tyler Lockett type guy. And Egbuka's just a very reliable guy that I think the Seahawks will value. And McMillan just has character issues that people are scared about, and I think, unlike other people, I think that's actually going to hurt his stock. Next, we have the Buccaneers. If we look at what they need, they lost a lot in that front seven, especially in the linebacker position. If we look at their depth chart, Levante David's getting very old, very old. Yeah, they did get Hassan Reddick, but he's more of a pass rusher. If you look linebacker, they don't have much. They got a lot of young guys for that defensive end position. But do you want Anthony Walker there at middle linebacker, Levante David? I don't think you do. So I'm gonna have them take a guy who I've seen as high as I think I've seen him as high as 11 to the 49ers. I'm gonna have him fall to 19. And that's gonna be Jihad Campbell, linebacker out of Alabama. He's gonna come in and make an immediate impact there in Tampa Bay. He just seems like a really Tampa Bay type player from what I've seen. And I think that's just the best fit available for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Next we have the Denver Broncos there at number 20. And a lot of you still watching are probably screaming at me to take a McMillan here. They need another receiver across from Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton wants a big time deal. They lost Jerry Jeudy. Bo Nix needs more playmakers in that offense. Take McMillan, and I will have them take a playmaker on offense to help Bo Nix, but it won't be McMillan. And this is arguably where we are going to find our first reach. And from the visits and from what I've seen, they desperately want a running back. They really didn't go out of their way to get one. Um, and it seems like the pick is going to be a Caleb Johnson. This could be a Trevon Henderson, but from the visits I've seen, the buzz I've seen, it seems like it's going to be Caleb Johnson. Maybe I'm totally wrong, and I'll admit that. I'll review my mock draft, come to the actual eventually later. Maybe next week. But it's from what I've seen, that's what's it's gonna be the pick. And McMillan's fall continues. So, and then we have the Steelers. Probably the most interesting pick because we all know it's probably going to be a quarterback. They're going to bring in Aaron Rodgers and they need a QB. But who's it going to be? Jalen Milrow or Jackson Dart? Who do you go with? The guy with the highest ceiling, the most upside, or the guy who is the most play ready now, which is Jackson Dart, and the highest ceiling, which is Jalen Milrow? Well, if you bring in Aaron Rodgers, you probably want the guy who's most ready to learn, who has the highest ceiling, and who's the most ready, or not most ready, but has the highest ceiling, and that's Jalen Milrow. He got an invite. I know Jackson Dart did too. It just came out like 2 days ago, but from what I've heard, they both love these prospects. Even Sanders, they love all three of these prospects. But I've heard the owner loves Milrow, loves what they could do, loves what he can do in that system, and that Mike Tomlin can fix him. So we'll see. Is he kind of like a Justin Fields? And did the Steelers kind of fail a Justin Fields? Mm, Yeah, kind of. They get their Justin Fields replacement. Backup quarterback ultimately is what he's going to be, just like Justin Fields, who can maybe develop into a starting quarterback. So there we go. Pittsburgh Steelers gets maybe, maybe. Geez, Mavericks are beating the Kings by that much. You serious? Kings, holy! All right, Chargers. They're gonna take best player available. They don't actually have a lot of visits. It's really hard to see what the Chargers are envisioning here for their picks. This could be this is definitely gonna be an edge. I feel like based off what they've lost. They lost Joey Bosa. Kihol Mack is on 1 year of his deal. They don't really have anyone left to play that position. If you look at the Chargers, and their depth there at defensive line, they don't have anyone. Like anyone, raise your hand if you heard of Scott Matlock. Deshaun Hand, he couldn't even make it on the Detroit Lions defensive line. What makes you think he's going to be on the Chargers? Uh, they just need a lot of help on that front seven. Um, so I'm gonna have them go with the best prospect available, which is Mike Green. I feel like the Chargers, they just came off a playoff loss. They can afford to give Mike Green the time to develop as an edge rusher. Is it the best fit for Mike Green? Probably not. But the Chargers probably want the guy with the most uh, potential to be that number one guy, like they had in Joey Bosa. He's not a Joey Bosa replacement. That would probably be if you want an exact, that'd probably be like a Jack Sawyer coming out of Ohio State. But the Chargers have this first round pick now. Jack Sawyer's way. This would be a huge reach for the Chargers to take a Jack Sawyer. I haven't seen that mock before, but made in the second round, right? So I'm gonna have them take Mike Green here. The Packers. This is what Tom Grassi wants. I think it's a very Packers type pick. And this is gonna be Michael Williams, edge out of Georgia. It's their number one need. You know, I don't. They need a guy to replace Preston Smith. They could use a corner. I know they desperately need a wide receiver, but I don't think wide receiver is the pick here for them. With I like Michael Williams on the board, I feel like you have to take him here. And he's not like a Jalen Walker. He's just like a traditional edge. He's not like an Abdul Carter. Um, he will play probably with. He'll probably rotate in with Lucas Van Ness. Um, they can maybe develop him to play in to where Preston Smith was playing. We'll have to see, but ultimately, I don't think he would probably end up rotating in with Lucas Van Ness, maybe even taking his starting job over. So we'll see, but that's going to be the pick there for the Packers. And this for this next pick, it seems like the most perfect option here for the Vikings. And that's going to be Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia. Just from the visits, from what I've seen, they needed. They didn't address safety at all. Harrison Smith is still their number one guy there. They didn't even address the free safety position because they lost Cameron Byam. They did replace. They did get tons of offensive line. And they addressed other needs as well. Like they got Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen to bolster that front seven. So they did lose out on Cam Bynum to replace them with other guys. They did re-sign Byron Murphy to help out in the secondary. So it's not like they ignored it, but they just addressed other needs. And why not if they can take the best safety available here at 24 in Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia. They want a guy who can lead the defense, and that's what Malachi Starks did for 3 seasons. He can really be mentored by Harrison Smith and really take over this Minnesota Vikings secondary. I see it for his future. I think he's a great talent. And the Vikings really get themselves a steal there, in my opinion, at 24. Now it's time for 25. I've seen Josh Simmons being mocked here. Obviously the pick here for the Texans would be offensive tackle. And a lot of teams think they need offensive tackle more than they do. Um, if we look at offensive tackle here, and for the Houston Texans, they're actually kind of okay. They even have depth at offensive tackle. Surprisingly enough, they have Cam Robinson and Titus Howard at left tackle, and at right tackle they signed a older but still solid Trent Brown, and they have Blake Fisher behind him. It's really the guard positions where they need the depth and improvement. Drew Shrug is right now starting at right guard, and that's someone you don't really want starting on your offensive line. And to replace him, why not take the best guard in the draft? Someone who's visited, who's come in, and that's a Tyler Booker, offensive guard out of Alabama. They're at 25. Um, some may say it's a steal, some may say it's a reach. So this is kind of like the perfect fit here for Tyler Booker. Next we got the LA Rams, and hmm, they lost a Demarcus Robinson. They need a number two, and they lost Cooper Kupp, but that's a slot guy that Puka Nacua can fill that easily, in my opinion. Puka Nacua, that's his natural role. And they brought in Devontae Adams to play the one, but I feel like they still need a two. Um, and it says they need linebacker, corner. Linebacker's not a great pick here right now. There's not a linebacker that you did great. Corner, you could go with it, sure. Based on the corners here, Jahdae Barron's here. That could be the pick there for the Rams, but I feel like they need a number two receiver to replace Tutu Atwell. And why not take a not McMillan? McMillan would be scary though in that Rams offense, but why not give him Luther Burden the third? I feel like Sean McVay can really touch up any character issues he may see in Luther Burden. I mean, it's more of a fit. McMillan's not a great fit. Luther Burden's, I feel like, a better fit in that LA Rams offense. So McMillan, he's going to continue to fall. Sorry, buddy, but it's I have you going to a good team. Don't you worry. Luther Burden goes to LA Rams. And I'm probably gonna get yelled at a lot because I have McMillan falling a lot. I have Calvin Banks falling a lot. Derek Harmon falling a lot. But that's what's gonna happen. There's gonna be really good prospects. They're ultimately gonna fall. It happens every year. 27. The Ravens, they need a tackle. They have Ronnie Stanley. Sure, this is one of those teams that they say they need a tackle. They actually do need a tackle. Like they're not kidding. Um, Baltimore Ravens. Here we go. They have Ronnie Stanley. They need someone across from him. That's the theme of this draft. You need a running mate. Roger Rosengarten is your starting right tackle. You don't want that. No, no, no. You don't want that. That whole right side's not looking great there for the Baltimore Ravens. Um, so they're gonna take Josh Simmons, offensive tackle that I've seen go as high as 11 in this in NFL mock drafts. He falls all the way to 27 for the Ravens. I think it's a perfect fit anyway. They could go Calvin Banks Jr. obviously, but I think they're gonna go with the guy they had visit and trust a little bit more in a Josh Simmons who played for that national championship team. Yeah, right. And now we have the Detroit Lions. A lot of my viewers are going to be Detroit Lions fans because those who know me are from Detroit and they're Detroit Lions fans. And a lot of them want an edge rusher, and it's hard not to agree with them. James Pierce Jr. would be a steal at 28. I agree. But they haven't brought in James Pierce Jr. He's not a Lions type guy. He's not a grit guy, in my opinion. If they take him, cool. I'm absolutely wrong. I sound really dumb for saying that. But they're going to take in a guy who they've brought in for a visit. It's the best player available. I've seen him go very high as well. Um, and he's just a very versatile guy who can play anywhere on the offensive line. He can play a tackle. He can replace Taylor Decker when he wants to retire or his contract ends. He can start right away at right guard where we have Christian Mahogany, who was kind of a wild card last season. He can compete right there immediately. Or if there's an injury for Graham Glasgow, he can step in at left guard. He's a very versatile guy, and they have him listed at guard, but he can play tackle too. It's obviously some list him as a tackle, and that's Gray Zabel for out of North Dakota State. Yeah, it's not the most competitive, sure, but when you see a guy who can be as versatile as Gray Zabel, you're going to value that a lot. And the Lions know how to develop offensive linemen. They've done it time and time again. And I think they're going to try to do that with Grade Zabel. Next, we have the Washington Commanders, and this is another reach. I will agree. They need an edge for sure. They lost a lot when it comes on that side of the ball, but they brought in a little bit too. But their front seven could definitely use a boost. Clinton Farrell's not really someone you want, or even Dorrance Armstrong. They're solid, but they're not gonna do you the job, right? They're not great options. They're not you want someone better than that. And you know, I want to bring in someone they brought in for a visit. Is James Pierce Jr. better? Yeah. Is Nick Scorton better? Probably. Donovan Uzaraku better? Yeah. Landon Jackson? I don't know. JT Tuamalo? Maybe. Princely Umano Melon? I would say yes, but they're going to bring in Olu Oladejo, edge out of UCLA. That's just what I've seen from the buzz and the visits. And a lot of teams visit him too. So you just never know. Um, I feel like Donovan Uzaraku would be a better pick here for the Commanders. That's who I would pick here for the Commanders, but that's not what they go with here. Then they take with Oladejo. All right, next we got the Buffalo Bills, and I'm gonna have them take a secondary guy. They could bring in a Derek Harmon, for that defensive tackle position. But their number one need is corner. I know defensive tackle is right there. There's just so many good corners available. And I'm actually going to have them take, according to PFF, the fourth best one. But he can easily be a first rounder. Some people say he's the best corner. The second or third best corner, opposite of Travis Hunter. But that's Trey Amos, corner out of Ole Miss. He had a career year for them, for that defense. And really plug someone in there for the Buffalo Bills where they don't have. It's like the one position on their team, other than maybe receiver, they don't have a lot of depth. If you look at the corner position, they have Taron Johnson. They have good starters, right? Christian Benford, Dorian Williams, Dane Jackson. Those are solid starters, but behind that, they don't really have anyone. And even Trey Amos, he can probably step into a starting corner position for any one of these guys, to be honest. Um, he'll probably be a fourth corner, though. He'll come off the bench at first, but he can really benefit there in Buffalo. Next, we have the Chiefs. We're going to go back to back corner. They lost Justin Reed. I know they list him as a safety, but he played a little bit of corner too. And they need someone next across from Trent McDuffie. And ultimately, I'm going to have them go Jahdae Barron, cornerback out of Texas. It was hard for me to choose for the Chiefs just because of I didn't see a lot coming out of them. But from what I've seen, corner, they really value offensive tackle later on. But Jahdae Barron, I feel like, is going to be the pick there at 31. And then the Eagles, I know uh, Hausman is really threatened to trade up. I could see them trade up for Malachi Starks. I really could if he's available. Another player out of Georgia to put on that defensive team. But they need edge rusher. You could say they need defensive tackle. But they have Jordan Davis. And they have Jordan Davis. They got Jalen Carter and Byron Young. But raise your hand if you've heard of Moro or Jomo. We need someone in that defensive end position. So to get pressure, they lost Josh Sweat. So you need someone to replace him. And I feel like to take best defensive end available, and that's Donovan Izaraku, edge out of Boston College. And he put up solid numbers, and I feel like the Eagles can definitely develop him into a solid edge. And they also lost two-time Super Bowl champion uh, Graham. Brandon Graham. Brandon Graham. I had to remember his name. It was stuck in my head. It is getting late at night. Let's see what time it is. How long have I been talking? Oh, way too long. Got it. Got it. Yeah. Okay, cool. Next we have the Cleveland Browns. Here 3-3, and I'm gonna stop talking about my picks as much as I gotta zoom through this. 33. Jackson Dart quarterback. Yeah, it doesn't. I don't know if they take a quarterback here, but if Jackson Dart falls to 33, it'd be hard it's for me to pass up on this guy. Um, so that's gonna be the pick there. The New York Giants, they take T Mac. You know, they wanted Travis Hunter to to add someone next to Malik Neighbors, and now you add a receiver that shouldn't even be here, and that's Torrin McMillan. You have Malik Neighbors and McMillan there in that receiving core. That is deadly. You know, the Titans are probably upset that they missed out on McMillan just by a pick. That would be deadly. Cam Ward to McMillan, I will say, but they get a player that could have been a number one overall pick like a year ago. They get the best edge available and probably steal in James Pierce Jr. Jaguars. They need a corner. They addressed it in Jordan Lewis, but they needed someone young there. They need someone next to him. And they get Siobhan Rebel. It allows him to rest and heal from the injury completely. Jordan Lewis can mentor him, really develop him, and add another piece there to that Jacksonville Duval defense. So there we go. That's the pick there. Raiders. They're gonna also add a corner. They lost Nate Hobbs. They could use another guy there. In the first round, they took running back, and they could take receiver here, but there's not really anyone worth taking. 37 overall pick on a receiver, especially this high. So they take corner. And from what I've visited, from what I've seen, Maxwell Harrison, from what I've mocked and seen, is could go as high in the first round, and he's going to fall to 37 to the Raiders. PFF have him a little bit far down, but this is about where he's going to land up anyway. So the New England Patriots, they went in the trenches in the first round, and that's where I have them going again. They get an edge. They lost out on Abdul Carter, but they get Nick Scorton instead. Solid pick there for the Patriots, and for the Bears, this is best possible solution. You get Calvin Banks, the guy you could have gotten in the first round, you really wanted, who is very versatile. He can play guard or tackle for Braxton Jones or Darnell Wright, or if there's an injury to Jonah Jackson or Joe Thuney, because they're injury prone up there in age, Calvin Banks can snub into that. So there we go. Calvin Banks Jr. is the pick there at 39 to the Bears. And we have the Saints. I've seen this is about where he lands, even though PFF also has him pretty far down the board, and that's Turner, defensive tackle out of Texas A&M. The Saints they have tons of positions and roles for what they need to do, and I feel like this is where the Saints go in this direction to add someone next to Cameron Jordan, a big time guy in Shamar Turner. And the Bears, this is the best case scenario for them. They get Derek Harmon. So now, if you look at their team, they get. I know they've also got in the trenches with Grady Jarrett, but now in the defensive tackle with Grady Jarrett, you can put in Derek Harmon immediately instead of Dexter Senior, or you can just build a solid rotation into there. But you have Montez Sweat, Deo. It's really solid front seven there, growing for the Bears, and then great offensive line, and you got a running back now. Next we have the New York Jets, and instead of taking Armin Membo, they went with a tight end instead. They get their offensive tackle of the future here in Aaron Ty Ursay, offensive tackle out of Minnesota. 49ers at 43. They also, they didn't take it in the first round. Taking the second, another Ohio State guy. Kind of like a Nick Bosa, but this time a defensive tackle. They take a Tyleek Williams here at 43 to bolster that interior of the defensive line. Because let's be honest, they don't have much going on there. There's nothing really going on. Now they add a big time guy, because they lost a lot there. He can start immediately there at left defensive tackle. All right, next we have the Dallas Cowboys. They took a receiver in the first round instead of offensive line. And this is where they're finally going to do it now. And they're going to take Josh Connerly, offensive tackle out of Oregon. The Colts at 45. From what I've seen, they don't really want another prospect. They got tight end. They could use some interior offensive line help. There's not really a lot of guys that could do that here. They could go Donovan Jackson. I don't know if they do that, though. I think they go with Quinn Ewers, quarterback out of Texas. Is it a little bit high? Sure, but I feel like the Colts view him highly, and he can immediately compete for that quarterback one role in Indianapolis. I feel like it's the best fit for him. 46 Atlanta Falcons. They're gonna get their Grady Jarrett replacement. Um, in the first round, they just need to bolster their front seven, right? They got Shamar Stewart, and now they get a big time defensive tackle in T.J. Sanders, another SEC guy from South Carolina. Cardinals at 47. Didn't address the offensive line in the first round. They're not going to do that in the second round because they're going to take a corner. They're going to take the best one available in Benjamin Morrison to build a young, good receiving core with Williams and Morrison. All right, next we got the Dolphins. They brought him in for a visit. They love his potential. They want someone next to Jonu Smith or even replace Jonu Smith. And they want another receiver. They love adding weapons to that offense for some reason. So they're going to do it. And they're going to take Mason Taylor, tight end, out of LSU. The Bengals at 49. It's a little bit of reach, but they need someone at that interior defensive tackle position. And they're taking Omer Norman lots, just from what I've seen from the visits. The number 50, the Seattle Seahawks. They do get their guy from that Mike McDonald defense to plug in right there with Leonard Williams, and that's Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle out of Michigan. Next, we got the Denver Broncos at 51. They didn't get a tight end. They got Evan Ingram. They got Caleb Johnson, and they reached in the first round, and they're going to reach again. Sean Payton loves to reach for his players, and he's going to do it again at 51 because they're going to take a tight end again. Not again, but a tight end was picked at 48. It's going to be a tight end picked at 51, and that's Harold Fannett Jr. Put up massive numbers at Bowling Green, and in that Bo Nix offense, he could put up big numbers there too. Next, we got the Seahawks again, and they just addressed defensive tackle. They got their number two receiver, and now they're finally going to address the interior of their offensive line. They're going to go Donovan Jackson. Like I said, their offensive tackle position I feel like is fine, so they go with guard instead, where they actually do need the help. The Buccaneers at 53. They're going to take a corner. They didn't do it in the first round. They decided to go with linebacker instead. Now they finally do it here. And they take Ziri Thomas out of Florida State, keep the guy home, keep the guy local, and he goes at 53, about the range that we could see him. 54, the Green Bay Packers. They need a big time wide receiver, and they go with a guy who they think is just really fast and could be lights out. And that kind of a reach, but that's an Isaiah Bond. Um, People loved his combine, his speed, his athleticism. So I think he's going to go really high. Second round pick, maybe too high. But from what I've seen, Green Bay's visits, I feel like that's going to be the pick there at 54. 55 is the Chargers. And like I said, they don't have anyone in that front seven, so they need to address it. And kind of like the Falcons, they need to bolster it up. And they took Mike Green with that first pick, and here they're going to take Darius Alexander, defensive tackle, out of Toledo. Not any, like I said, they're going to give these guys time to develop. Darius Alexander out of Toledo. He did play Mississippi State and won by a lot. So they have proven themselves against big time talent. Same with Mike Green out of Marshall, put up big time numbers. So we'll have to see. The Buffalo Bills at 56. They took a corner there. And their first round pick. And at 56, they're also going to take another safety to can maybe replace Damar Hamlin. And that's going to be Xavier Watts. The Bills they're going to address secondary a bunch, and that's what they do. The Buffalo Bills fans of what they've wanted for years to address that secondary. And now they finally do here in this NFL mock draft. 57 here. The Panthers, they're going to keep reaching for players. I know how they had Jalen Walker, but they're going to take a guy to put right next to Bobby Brown. They signed, and they also got Derek Brown, Bobby Brown, Derek Brown. And now they're going to bring in a third defensive tackle for a solid rotation, and that's Deion Walker, big time defensive tackle out of Kentucky. And really bolster that front seven. 58, we got the Texans, and I feel like Joe Mixon's getting up there in age. From what the visits I've seen, it looks like they want to take a running back. They took offensive line in the first round, Tyler Booker, and now they want to give CJ Stroud another weapon. And the best one available here is you could say it's Henderson. I'm gonna have Judkins go ahead of them. Henderson is probably what I would pick, but I think they want someone similar to Joe Mixon who can be his heir. And I think they're fine with Damian Pierce being their power back for now. So they're gonna have Judkins there at 58. 59, we have the Ravens. In the first round, I had them go offensive line. Here I'm gonna have them address their second need, which is corner. And they're taking Denzel Burke, corner out of Ohio State. Yeah, he's going over Darren Porter. I think he's just a bigger name. That's what I've seen the visited. Lions at 60. It's a guy that they've scouted a lot, brought in for a few visits. Local guy. Uh, this isn't a guy I would say is great value here, but I feel like it'd be a good pick. Wouldn't be someone I get super hype about, but I don't think he's got a superstar potential to him. Maybe if we develop him, but he won't be immediate impact guy to that defensive edge position. The Lions do finally take a defensive edge. In Josiah Stewart, he's not the best one available here, but it's what the Lions like character. They like grit. They like who they like. And Josiah Stewart, based off the scouting reports for the Detroit Lions, that's who I feel like they're going to pick here at 60. The Commanders at 61. This seems like a very Commanders type pick. This guy can play guard. I think they actually have him listed at guard. Yeah, they do. And they kind of need that. If you saw that the Commanders' offensive line dealt with a lot of injuries, and they need to protect Jaden Daniels at all costs, they take their number one need, and now they address the number two need. They have Cosme at right guard, but the left guard's kind of lackluster. They need to add someone next to Tunsil, and they do that in Wyatt Millum, offensive guard out of West Virginia. Keep him somewhat local. The Bills at 62. They get another pick. They address the secondary. Do they do it again at 62? No, they finally get a receiver, and that is in Jalen Royals, receiver out of Utah State. Uh, Chiefs at 63. Some may say this is a surprise, but they take the best player available in Trayvon Henderson, running back out of Ohio State. Isaiah Pacheco, off his injury, didn't have the greatest. Yeah, they do have Elijah Martin. But I think the Chiefs just they want a big time power back. Elijah Martin and Isaiah Pacheco isn't that. Um, it just also gives them a really solid three-headed running back on Henderson, Pacheco, and Elijah Martin or Elijah Mitchell. So there we go. I think that's great value too. 64. The Eagles do take a Georgia player this time around, but that's going to be at the guard position. They're going to take Tate Ratledge out of, or no, Dylan Fairchild. Sorry, wrong Georgia guy. Dylan Fairchild, guard out of Georgia. Round three. Let me just name the players who I have. If you have any comments or you have any questions on why I have them picked, just let me know. This guy is hyped to be this guy. The Giants didn't take a quarterback in the second round. They do it in the third with Tyler Shaw. Chiefs 66. Travis Hunter replacement Gunnar Helm. Browns 67. They finally do get an edge, but that's in Landon Jackson. 68. The Raiders they finally do get a receiver for Geno Smith, and that is in Trey Harris, receiver out of Ole Miss. 69. New England Patriots they take a receiver too. They take a Jalen Noel, receiver out of Iowa State. Two good Iowa State receivers here in Jalen Higgins and Jalen Noel. They opt for Jalen Noel. But don't worry because his teammate goes a pick later to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who now get Brian Thomas, Gabe Davis, De'Ami Brown, and now Jaden Higgins. That's the pick there at 70. The Saints now at 71. They need a linebacker next to Demario Davis, Pete Warner. They bring in a guy who can be the next Pete Warner, and that's in Carson Schwessinger out of UCLA. I'm looking over my shoulder to make sure I wrote down all these picks because I did it step by step. I'm not just doing the picks as I see them now. That would be insane. I did do a little bit of research. And then 72. This guy probably goes way farther down than he'll probably be a second round pick, but maybe he falls to third. This is Kyle Williams, receiver out of Washington State. Some people have him as as high as receiver 2, to be honest. Not for me though. He falls to the Bears, who now get themselves their Keenan Allen replacement. They have Rome Dunze. They get DJ Moore. Now they get Kyle Williams. The 73, and they or 72. Yep, I already did 72. 73. The Jets. They get their Jamal Adams replacement. A long time in the making, but they get Andrew Mukaba, safety out of Texas. He can compete with Ashton Davis immediately there. Not Ashton Davis. I meant Andre Cisco, or even start at free safety. All right, so the Panthers at 74. I'm losing my mind. I need to do this quick so I can go to bed. 74. The Panthers, they do get a corner to put next to J.C. Horn. That's their number one team need. They finally address it. But it's not in Darian Porter, not in Dorian Strong. It's going to be in Quincy Riley, defensive back out of Louisville. 75, 75. The 49ers get their Greenlaw replacement, and that's in uh where is it? Where is it? Chris Paul Jr., linebacker out of Ole Miss. Right, that's what I have there at pick number 75. Yes, I do. And then another linebacker goes there, the Cowboys. They get a true middle linebacker. And that's in Demetrius Knight Jr. 77. The Patriots are up again. They addressed a lot of needs. A lot of needs. But they're going to take corner here. And they're going to take Jacob Parrish, corner out of Penn State, to put next to Rodriguez. A very small guy, but he proved it against big time talent. He put up great numbers. He can prove himself there in New England. 78. The Cardinals. And this Arizona guy stays local. Um, what's his name for the Cardinals running back currently? He survived cancer. Great story, great running back. Connor? James Connor. It came to me before I even got to it. James Connor, great story, but they don't really have anyone behind him. Trey Benson's not, I don't trust that. And James Connor could use a replacement anyway. And so they bring in the local guy. They bring in Cameron Scadaboo. Houston Texans at 79. They take a tight end. They do have a lot of tight ends right now, but from what I've seen, they need another. It's not even one of their team needs, but they bring in a playmaker. From the visits I've seen, this is what they're gonna do. Colts 80. It's gonna be Alfred Collins, defensive tackle, put right next to the guy there. Bengals at 81. It's gonna be Jonah. I'm not gonna say his last name. Seahawks at 82. They take Jared Wilson to address the center position. Like I said, they need to address the interior. So they did. They got Donovan Jackson and Jared Wilson. The Steelers did it before, and now the Seahawks do it this time. Steelers at 83. They take DJ Giddens, a running back. They lost Najee Harris. They take a quarterback. But now they need a running back to complement him, and they take DJ Giddens here. He's the best one available. Next we have the Buccaneers at 84. And they take the best edge rusher available. I really like how this Buccaneers draft is coming across. It's Princely Amuamalin. Broncos at 85. They get themselves a corner that's fallen very down the board. A compliment to defensive player of the year. You see, it's crazy when it's getting that late. You don't even know the defensive player of the year. Like that's unreal. How your brain just shuts down like that. I'm still talking. I'm still going. Because you got to be professional. Pat Surtain, that's insane. Okay, well they bring in Riley Moss can play that too, but you bring in another guy to help. Darian Porter. All right, 86. Chargers, they double down on the edge and they get JT Tuamolo. They get a guy who they get a guy who they're hoping can be really good in Mike Green, but they also get a guy can help them win now. Has proven himself in JT Tuamolo. Mike Green has the higher ceiling, and this guy also just can play now. There we go. Yeah, you get what I'm saying. 87 Green Bay. Anthony Belton. I really should have wrote some of these later positions. It's like, do I remember what position they play? I should have wrote down these positions. Anthony Belton is a offensive tackle, though, right? Right. He is. You see, I'm so good. The Packers finally addressed the offensive tackle position. 88. Jaguars take an edge for depth, and once you get to these later third round picks, it's the teams aren't really looking for starters. They're mostly looking for depth who can develop into starters. Um, and the pick's gonna be Fidel Diggs, edge out of Syracuse there, for the Jags. 89 is gonna be another edge and Kyle Kennard. Uh, Rams at 90. They're gonna take quarterback Will Howard. Shocker pick. They take Will Howard. I've seen his draft stock fall. This could be a Colin McCord here, but I think this is where the Will Howard end up landing to get their Rams get their quarterback potential maybe of the future. Ravens 91. They take a safety in Jalen Reed for depth. He can maybe if he develops into a starter. We'll have to see. Seahawks at 92. I'm really liking how the Seahawks draft is going too. They get a tackle who they really upgraded his offensive line because now they get Cameron Williams as well, who can maybe even be a starter there. They really improved. They got upgrades at that right side immediately. Abraham Lucas plays on that right tackle, and Cameron Williams can even compete there. Maybe start over Abraham Lucas. Maybe 93. Save obviously some teams who lack positions and take those positions. They're going to get starters in the third round, but most of the time it's going to be guys that can develop into starters. 93. It's going to be Savion Williams, receiver. They need a guy that Sanders can throw the ball to, who can rely and stay healthy, and that's going to be Savion Williams out of TCU. Now we got he goes over his fellow teammate Jack Beck. 94. It's going to be Tate Ratledge. They have a bunch of old guys there, and Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller. They need depth there, and they bring in the guy from Georgia and Tate Ratledge, who's fallen pretty far, who's probably won't fall that much. Next, we have Q Robinson for the Chiefs, edge rusher out of Alabama. Q Robinson. Jack Sawyer probably shouldn't be here either, to be honest, even though PFF has him this far down. 96, we have Marcus Membo for the Eagles. They finally addressed the offensive line. They can bring a guy who can compete at right guard for they list him at tackle. He can play guard though. He can compete with Kenyon Green, or even they can get their Lane Johnson replacement in Marcus Membo, offensive tackle out of Purdue. Vikings at 97, Jack Beck. Bring in a depth guy, former LSU guy. They're gonna love former LSU guys when they have Justin Jefferson. They have Jordan Addison. They have Jordan Naylor, or Speedy Naylor, I should say. And they bring in Jack Beck, who can compete with Jalen Naylor there in the slots. Maybe they move Jalen Naylor to a number 2 tight end. He kind of plays a tight end guy. With T.J. Hawkinson out last season for a few games, they kind of had him as the tight end. So maybe he moves to a more like a second tight end set. He'll come in for 2 tight end sets. Jack Beck can move into that slot role for the Vikings. 98, the Dolphins. We have Emory Jones there. They finally addressed the offensive tackle position. They have Patrick Paul at left tackle. Their GM said that he can play that, but they're probably going to want someone who can compete for that position. And they have Jackson Carman at right tackle. They'll be fine there. Giants at 99. It's going to be defensive tackle to put next to Leonard Williams. Really bolster really with Abdul Carter. Really bolster that front seven. Joshua Farmer out of Florida State. 49ers won a 100. Miles Frazier, guard out of LSU, to get their Aaron Banks replacement, maybe. can maybe compete, but will probably be a depth guy. 101, the Rams that is going to reach for a guy in Jackson Slater. Stay local. They know what he can be. And the Lions get their Ifatu Malfonru replacement. Kirby Joseph isn't signed long term. They bring in a guy they've scouted, they looked at, they liked, and Kevin Winston Jr. And that's it. We're done. We're done. That is my 3-round NFL mock draft. Let me know if you have any questions. How accurate is this going to be? Will I be better than Mel Kiper? We will have to see. If you guys are still listening, thank you guys so much. I dearly appreciate it. And we'll see you guys. Maybe I do another mock draft with family. We'll have to see. I'll post a video more about the NFL mock draft challenge if you're interested in that. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for listening.